What's up, dads? It's your boy Big Dave, back with another episode of Culture Dads, Age of Sword and Cassette. Today we're going to talk about something that me and Mike both just love. Like, this is something we're big fans of, something a lot of you guys listening are big fans of, and it's something that a lot of you guys listening might like somewhat or are probably would like it if you got into it. And we're talking about doom metal. What's up, Mike?
What's going on, Dave? Yeah, this is what we do here at Culture Dads. We introduce guys to shit they may not have got a taste of yet. You know what I mean? This is what it is to be a dad. This is what it is to be a curator of culture, is to guide people through and, yeah, just like give them good suggestions as to stuff that they might not have heard of, you know? Yeah. So this is a big one. This is one of the ones that like has caught me many years ago and has stuck with me. It's been a favorite all throughout the years. So I'm very excited to dive into it.
So actually, let's kind of talk about what doom metal is to us. And then we're going to do a little brief history on where it comes from and, you know, kind of the bands that were along the timeline. And then we'll, you know, all that kind of stuff. So how did you get into doom metal? And when somebody says doom metal, what does that mean to you?
Well, what doom metal means to me, it actually it has a very personal meaning to me because it's bound up with a good friend of mine from the music scene when I used to play back in the day. So I grew up in southwestern Ontario. And then moved from there all the way across the country over to the West Coast to like start my music career. Basically, that was the plan. It was go west, young man. You know, like try and make a go of it, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So myself and you know, my family as well as my bandmates, we landed on the West Coast and started up and just got into the music scene. And not knowing anybody there, we just I won't tell the story of my band, but like suffice it to say, we got into a studio, started recording, and there was a guy that was sort of just in the studio hanging around and like, you know, listening. He was a friend with the engineer, and long story short, him and I became really good friends. And he had a doom metal band, an experimental doom metal band that I ended up joining later. And this is a guy, so, you know, I'd be about 20, 22, 23 years old, that kind of like age at this time. He was in his 40s, so he was, you know, quite a bit older than me and very experienced, had a massive record library, CDs and everything. Like, this is back in the early 2000s, so CDs were still a thing. He had a huge library of music, and just, it was like an encyclopedia of musical knowledge, and a metal guy, big metal guy. So he kind of took me to school here, right? Took me under his wing and sort of mentored me in the ways all things metal and experimental and weird. He, like I say, his experimental doom metal band, it was a very weird project. I heard it and I loved it instantly. Took a few years for me to join up, but like, it was, yeah, I was very impressed right off the bat. And he introduced me to all kinds of music like noise and drone and all kinds of, and even just older stuff like, you know, pop music from the 60s and like obscure stuff from that era, from the 60s and 70s. So it was really cool. That was all part of it. Of course, doom was sort of maybe the linchpin of this whole musical education I was getting. So, one of the first bands he introduced me to was Electric Wizard, introduced me to Dope Throne. The band I was playing in at the time was a grunge band. We had some pretty slow and heavy crunchy riff type songs and everything like that. And he was like, you got to check out this band, Electric Wizard. And it was like kind of what we were doing, but like slowed down, half tempo, even from us, and just like so heavy. I mean, yeah, you know, Electric Wizard, you know what they sound like, right? And I just remember smoking just bong rip after bong rip, sitting in his house, and like he had a massive massive stereo. It was disgusting how overpowered this. Oh, it was so good. And we'd just be listening to Electric Wizard at like 110 dB, late into the night, just like the subwoofer shaking my skull. It was just, and I was so fucking wrecked. It's just so good. It was exactly how that music was meant to be experienced. So without going into much more of that story, that's kind of what doom metal means to me. It has a very special place in my heart. It's a formative part of my musical education, and it'll always remind me of the music scene at that time, which was very cool. So yeah, it's got a very personal meaning for me. What does it mean for you, Dave? Tell us about it.
Okay, so doom metal, you could say that doom metal was my first favorite, metal genre, right? Because my first favorite band was Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Well, Black Sabbath, yeah, I would kind of take you. I think my first really favorite metal genre that wasn't just plain metal was probably thrash. I was growing up American in the 90s. Thrash was king. You know, I mean, the 90s was when Pantera and Slayer and Metallica and Megadeth and Anthrax and Death Angel and Testament and Exodus and Creator's German, but Creator, like all these bands are like at their peak. So I was like a little kid when like all of these bands, and my dad actually introduced, my dad is a metalhead. He's not into death metal and stuff like that, but my dad listens to his favorite band is Megadeth. He listens, he had all the old school albums from the big four. He listened to, he listened to a lot of that shit. He was into 80s and 90s metal. He wasn't so much into anything that was more power metal adjacent. Like he had Iron Maiden, he had Dio, he had, these kinds of bands. But he was a 70s guy. His favorite band growing up, his two favorite bands were Black Sabbath and Deep Purple, which I guess I inherited that from, because those are like my two favorite classic bands still. But nice. He likes stuff like Blue Oyster Cult. He likes let me think. Golden Earring. He likes Fog Hat. You know what I mean? He likes the more kind of rockin', the harder rock kind of side of the 70s. He doesn't. So you're not going to hear my dad talk. Like if you ask him if he likes Barry Manilow or something, he's going to tell you like that's fucking fat shit. He's not going to. Yeah, but that's how I got introduced to metal. Periods through my dad, and also my big brother was into it. My big brother introduced me to like Manowar. My older brother was really into. My older brother was like really into like new metal and cornball shit, like butt rock too. But he also liked some good stuff too, and he introduced. So I had some pretty cool music influences growing up, but doom metal specifically, outside of Black Sabbath, very early on, I got my hands on some of the old school doom stuff. I had cassettes for Pentagram, some of the early Pentagram albums. I had a cassette of the early. There's a band called Cathedral, a band called Saint Vitus. Let me think. And then probably my favorite one outside of Black Sabbath that I ran into was Candlemass. I fell in love with Candlemass.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about them quite a few times, actually. It's definitely like a big one for you. Yeah.
Their first album, Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus. And also, they're like albums like Nightfall, when you get Messiah Marcolin in there. I'm not going to go. I could do a whole show about Candlemass. So we're not going to do that. But Candlemass is one of them. And then, I got into, some others as well. So I always kind of liked it, but I never really, like if you told me back then, like, hey, Dave, this stuff is doom metal, I wouldn't have understood that. I would have been like, what do you mean? Like, I just thought it was other types of metal. I was like, oh, this stuff kind of sounds like Sabbath. I didn't understand that doom metal was a genre back then. So, actually, I didn't, I sort of got it. When I got into faster stuff, I got it. Obviously, I went right. I'm a thrash guy. So full thrash. And after I got into thrash, I discovered Deicide and Cannibal Corpse and Morbid Angel and Death and like the old school like heavy fucking death metal bands. And then from there, this is what all death metal guys do. You just get obsessed with, you get on this quest to find the fastest, most brutal shit you can find. So I get into Nile and Dying Fetus and, you know, all of the really brutal shit. I just get all into that. And I'm a death metal guy for like years and years. And I guess probably like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. During this whole time, I still liked Candlemass. I still obviously still listen to Sabbath, still listen to a lot of these different guys. But like 5, 6 years ago, I like start slowing down. I start get bored with death metal a little bit. Like it doesn't excite me anymore. I think there was that big. I guess it was a little longer than 5, 6 years ago. The deathcore. You remember like deathcore came out in like the mid 2000s. Late 2000s, 2010s, actually. Deathcore became like the new death metal, and I didn't really love it. I lived in an area where when thrash and like that kind of old school metal sound sort of went out, it got replaced by what was called post-hardcore, and I was like left in the dust. I still wearing Slayer shirts. I'm still wearing, obituary shirts, and I still listening to this shit. And then the guys that are all in my scene, like, start getting into bands like August Burns Red, which is actually originally from my area. It was called post-hardcore. It was like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like,
I know the genre. There was a couple of guys that I was like, in audio school with that were like heavy into that shit. Yeah. It was like emo mixed with hardcore. So you had like breakdowns, but it was like, there was like a lot of, they wear girl pants and had like the weird slicked raven hair. It's like the scenester emo. It was really gay, and I just didn't like it at all. So I was like, fuck this. You know what I mean? And then deathcore comes out in the wake of that, and some of those bands were okay. There were some deathcore bands that I thought were pretty good. You get Job for a Cowboy out of this; they had some pretty good stuff. You get Through the Eyes of the Dead out of this. You get who's like who's one that's actually really good. It's like slipping my mind. Doesn't matter. So deathcore comes out. And I like some of it, but I'm not vibing with it. And then old school death metal sort of repositions itself, and it just lost its magic to me after it went through all of those phases and picked up elements from those previous genres. I didn't love it. I kind of fell out of love with it. I still love the old school stuff, but whatever. And also around this time, this was when I was living in Jersey. I had like a blackened death metal band, and it just never took off. We couldn't get guys to stick around. I couldn't find musicians that would actually take it seriously and show up to practice. It was like me and the drummer had for like 2 years had this like revolving door of members, and I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm not playing music. I'm done with music. I quit. And during this time, I had children after I quit doing music. And I don't know what happened. I sort of boomer. I was like, I'll go back to the roots. So I started listening to Sabbath again. I was like, you know what? I'm going to dig out my Heaven and Hell, which is, is like Dio years. I got back in the Dio years. I get back in the Tony Martin years. I get back in the Ozzy years. I start finding bands that were kind of adjacent to them that had similar sound. I rediscover Candlemass. I get back into the Doom, right? I get back into Doom. And I just, I didn't realize, but since I like went through that transformation and all those different genres and everything like that, which I still like all of it and whatever, but music guys have like a journey that they go through. It's like, it's like anybody, but, or anything, but, I get to this point and I was like, I slowed down a little bit. The blast beats and everything don't excite me like they used to. I'm not out here with something to prove. I have a different vibe about me now. I'm a dad now. I got to dip. My mind works. I just got a different vibe at this point in my life. And I didn't know that during that time, the Doom scene exploded, right? So I go to this show at some point
and it's a doom show, and it's like local show. The headliner was a more famous band. I don't remember who they were, but I was like, this fucks. This show, this was dope. You know what I mean? It was a real tiny little show. The riffs were just very primitive and fuzzed out. There were guys that were doing cool singing stuff. There was like psychedelic shit. There was like one that was like real heavy and primal. And they're like, these guys just show me, they're like, yo, you got to check out this band, this band, this band, this. They showed me a bunch of bands, and I just go on the internet and I look up these bands. I look up everybody around them. And then I find out that a lot of my internet buddies are taking the same path. It was like, a lot of my internet buddies, some of my buddies in real life, they're like, I run back into them and they're like, we used to jam and like, yo, dude, you get into any of this doom stoner shit? I'm like, yeah, dude, I have you. It's just weird how this kind of shit happens. But so I get back into it, and then I start playing guitar again a few years ago. And, after you don't play for a long time, now, I've never been a really great guitar player. I've always been a mediocre guitar player, to be honest with you. I'm a songwriter and I'm a vocalist that also plays guitar. So I always I'm the rhythm vocalist songwriter guy, and I always get a lead guitar player on, right? That's just how I've always operated. So picking the guitar back up after years and years of not playing, I was so rusty. You guys can go listen to my song Cosmic Garden. I wrote that song like after like playing my guitar again for like a few months. It was like, it's literally a few power chords and like that's it. I just wanted to write something, but I didn't have the chops that I used to. So I just started playing, and then this kind of sound started coming out, and it just all comes together. So since then, I have just dove into the doom scene. I'm looking up fuzz pedals. I got my own fuzz pedal rack that I'm like building. I get all into it. I bought an SG knockoff guitar that I'm modding out. I'm all in, bro. I'm all in. I'm like loving bands like Kal-El, bands like Spirit Caravan. All of these awesome bands. I'm getting into subgenres of doom I didn't even know were there. I heard, I'll be honest with you, when I first heard Sleep, which was back in, the 2000s, I thought I hated it. I was like, because I heard Dope Smoker, their album Dope Smoker. I was not I was listening to fucking, Origin. Like guys that are playing laser sweeps and blast beats and shit. I was not in the mind. I was like, who the fuck would listen to this? Now I think it's cool. You know what I mean? So I came back around and I went back and looked at some of these doom bands, stoner bands that I thought were stinky back then, and now I'm fucking with them. I like it. So that's my trip into doom. To wrap this up, what doom means to me. First of all, doom, when you say doom to me, that could mean a bunch of different things. So what I've come to find out is that doom metal is one of the most diverse genres of music there is. You will find multiple bands that all kind of like are in the same genre that sound completely different. You put Caius next to Sleep, next to Sun, next to Trip Hazard, next to Stone Jesus, next to fucking Electric Wizard. You put these bands all next to each other, they're like completely different genres, right? So it depends what you mean by doom. It could be anything. But when you say doom to me, what I'm looking for is something slow and something heavy. That's it. Something slow and heavy and kind of old school. That's it. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and that's what makes it awesome. Like this is what I liked. I'm going to resist the temptation to talk about grunge too much during this episode, but
doom influenced grunge.
Well, this is the thing: is that like Jack Endino, the producer guy who produced like all the grunge bands before they made it. Basically, he was like the house producer at Sub Pop back in the 80s and 90s. They interviewed him on this documentary called Such Hawks, Such Hounds, which is basically about stoner metal and doom and everything. And he was like, stoner rock is just grunge. And really, both of them are just 70s heavy rock continued, right? So there is a continuum that like runs from all the way from Black Sabbath to like Nirvana, and then beyond, all the way into like the 2000s and up to the present day, and the efflorescence and explosion of all these subgenres of doom and everything. It is quite varied, and it's got quite a bit of diversity to it, but it all sort of comes back to that sort of like root point and everything like that. But I mean, for me, like I really like Black Sabbath because they were just doing something so different, and they were so elemental. They obviously were creative enough to birth like multiple genres. They're a band for the ages. Obviously, it goes without saying. But the thing is, I don't like blues. I don't like blues at all, which is weird because I like Zeppelin. I don't know how that works, but I don't know how that works. But I just don't like it. So for me, what I like best about doom is the stuff that's kind of getting away a little bit from that, like, fog hat kind of vibe and everything like that. That's why I like the Electric Wizards. That's why I like Sleep. That's why I like these like things that are sort of moving in a bizarre direction, a kind of extreme direction and everything like that. But the thing is, running all the way from Sabbath to Nirvana to Electric Wizard and all of these bands is sort of a thread that is less is more. You know what I mean? There is a simplicity to it. There is a kind of doing something with a minimal amount of elements that is like really, really fucking cool. There is there's a minimalism to it. And what's interesting is that some of these really heavy duty, like drone doom bands, and this is getting into the weeds here, maybe a little early in the episode, but doom sort of branching off from like Sabbath and the 70s kind of vibes that sort of like make up the meat and potatoes of it, gets into some weird territory. And some of these guys are like Sun O, for example, who I'm sure we'll discuss at length later, is they're basically like a drone metal band. They don't have a drummer. All of their stuff is like very low and slow and subsonic and kind of like glacially, like at a glacial pace and everything. These guys were influenced as much by experimental, like classical composers, extreme sort of like noise composers from like the New York art scene and things like that, that were doing minimalist stuff. Minimalism is a kind of key element in this genre, and this is part of what makes it great. And we've talked about minimalism a little bit before in several episodes to do with art, and how great art is always constrained. Like T.S. Eliot, the famous American poet, actually, said that talking about free verse, which is as minimalistic as it gets, it's no rules, right? It's free. But what he says is that no verse is free for the man who wants to do a good job, right? So you always have to have some kind of, at least some conventionality, some rules, something to kind of hang, like a skeleton or like a scaffolding to build the genre or the sound or the aesthetic around. You have to have something, however minimal. But from there, even if you have the most minimal elements, you can kind of build on that and have that become like a variation on a theme sort of thing. And the beauty of doom metal is in doing a lot with very, very little. Like Yngwie Malmsteen was interviewed, and I think it was that Metal Headbanger Journey documentary, where he's like, less is more? No, more is more. I'm like, no, fuck, dude. No, he's wrong. He's wrong. I'm sorry. Like, less is actually more. The best art is freedom within constraints. You could think of something like, to give it a analogy here, take it outside the realm of music for a moment. Think of something like video game design. Think of classic games that were not only great, but spawned a whole genre. You could think of something like Space Invaders. You could think of, and that's pretty primitive, but you could think of something like Tetris or SimCity or Ogre Battle, or, well, we talked about this last episode. We could think about Pokemon, right? Or something like Wolfenstein, or, more modern, something like Minecraft, right? Think of all these classic games that were not only great, but like spawned all these imitators. What were they? Or you could even think of something like D&D or Magic the Gathering or something like that, right? Any of these, genres within like art media, it's all just endless variation within a very, very limited set of rules or conventions. And it's the same thing with doom metal. It's the same riff repeated over and over and over again, like with subtle variations or shifts in timing, or even just repeated, just straight up repeated until it kind of puts you into a trance. Yeah, like there's that quote from that documentary I mentioned. Sometimes you just want to hear that riff for 52 minutes. The guys, they're talking about how it's like they'd be like listening to an old Sabbath album. They'd be like, "Why did that riff change, dude? I wanted to hear that again. I wanted to hear that riff for 10 minutes, maybe 50 minutes." But anyway, it's this like variation on a theme, a freedom to spread your wings within a quite limited set of like rules. This is how traditions work. It's not just constant innovation over and over and over and over again, like the cycle growing tighter and tighter, like a feedback loop of shittiness. If you want to see what that gives you, take a look at modern art. Take a look at modern like movie making and everything like that. And like it's on the one hand, like, modern culture is constantly trying to reinvent itself, to basically subvert, let's say "fuck you, dad" to the last generation, like you weren't progressive enough or whatever. So it's constantly trying to do that, but it's also paradoxically just got no gas left in the tank. It's got absolutely nothing to say. There's no cultural vitality. There's nothing interesting or original left to say for these people. So it's like, on the one hand, they're trying hard to sort of like subvert and to hit the reset button every 5 seconds, right? But at the same time, they have no vitality left, so they just end up like recycling shit, and it just like sounds horrible. This is the exact opposite of what doom metal is doing. Doom metal is consistently and consciously looking back to the past. It's looking at the tradition. It's saying, yeah, we like fucking Sabbath. We're gonna make some shit that kind of sounds like that plus X or whatever, or like add your little spin on it. But they're consciously aiming at tradition. They're working within a framework that is quite conventional, and that's what makes it work, because they lean into that. They don't pretend like they're trying to be like like they're trying to be like special snowflakes doing like new and bold shit when they're actually not. It's the opposite. They're like leaning into the tradition, and they're actually doing some like quite innovative stuff with it. So this is how an art movement really should look. And that's part of what I like about it. It's part of what caught me immediately when I heard it, and it's part of why it continues to be a vital movement today. It's exactly the opposite of what you see in the mainstream.
And one reason that I think like doom metal is like the most metal genre now is it actually sounds fucking heavy. You know what I mean? You listen to so much modern death metal, it's ridiculous. It sounds like clean. It sounds too pretty. It's overproduced. All the guitar players are looking for that tight tone, and they're using all these amp sims and all this kind of shit. And like doom metal bands are like, nah, fuck that. Our shit is gonna be raw. It's gonna be heavy. It's gonna be crushing. It's gonna be loud. It's like they're like the guys in the 70s and the 80s were not wrong We want to get the biggest fucking tube amps possible. We want to run these fuzz and distortion pedals to make it heavy as fuck. We're going to down tune and we're going to play chunky, heavy ass riffs that make people want to headbang. And then we're going to play diminished, and we're going to play this, and we're going to do, rocks. And you mentioned about the grunge stuff. Here's a perfect example. First of all, there was like a branch off of doom metal that now gets called desert rock. And kind of the band that defines this is Caius. I'm not a huge Caius fan, but I respect them, right? They're objectively a good band that started a whole bunch of shit. You hear these a lot of desert rock bands and desert rock sounding bands, stoner rock sounding bands now get labeled as grunge, right? Yeah. For example, Soundgarden, Queens of the Stone Age. Queens of the Stone Age is a straight up desert rock band. Soundgarden is a straight up desert rock band. That's why Soundgarden doesn't sound like who's that guy?
Yeah, Eddie Vedder.
Yeah, what's his band?
Pearl Jam.
Yeah, that guy. So anyway, Pearl Jam. They don't sound like Pearl Jam. They don't sound like Silverchair or like whatever the fuck these bands. They sound different. Why? They have rock. They sound like 70s rock. They come from like desert rock and doom metal. And here's the example for first of all, their guitar player, Kim Thale, plays a fucking a Guild Polara, which is an SG. It's like, if you see the SG and you hear those sounds, you're like, okay, this is a doom metal guy, because the SG is the Tony Iommi guitar. Right, there's two guys that are known for the SG. You got Tony Iommi and you got Angus Young. Outside of, if you see that guitar, somebody playing that guitar, they're from one of those two guys, right? Yeah. So he plays an SG, and on top of it, Kim Thale from Soundgarden has played with the drone metal band Sun O.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like the links are there. It's like,
there's definitely a kind of filiation. There's like a family resemblance and relation between all of those bands for sure.
And it's, the Pacific Northwest, like Seattle, it's not that far from where the desert rock scene was, which was like, I don't know, Southern California and Arizona and shit. You know what I mean? It's still I guess it is kind of far, but it's still the West Coast. It's still like they're both West Coast scenes that informed one another. But so when you get into doom metal, you have a few different genres, and there's certain genres that other doom fans don't like. Not all doom fans are the same. You got, first of all, you got your standard doom, your trad doom, which is going to be your Black Sabbath, is going to be your St. Vitus, going to be your Cathedral, it's going to be Trouble, it's going to be Pentagram, which Pentagram was started in the 70s. That's a really influential band that a lot of people overlook because they have such a guys, listen, go dig into Pentagram and go give them a listen. They have so many albums. They put out so much music, and it's all from this kind of tragic figure named Bobby Liebling. I don't even know if he's still alive. I think he died finally. But and there's a really good documentary about him. It's called Last Days Here, right? So Bobby Liebling, who was like one of the pioneers of the doom genre period and heavy metal period. He started Pentagram in the 70s. Is an out of control. He's like a genius, and he's very talented, brilliant songwriter, but he's also an out of control, self-destructive, like multi-drug addict, addicted to multiple different types of substances. And he's just completely fucking out of his mind. And he's so self-destructive. And anytime his band starts, the band can't exist without him. And every time he starts getting up there, he like relapses and smokes a bunch of crack and shoots up heroin and gets arrested and fucking overdoses and almost dies and has to get Narcaned. And he's just a mess, complete mess. And in this documentary, actually, the guy is like, I'm like I'm an obsessed Pentagram fan, and I want to see the original lineup get back together. And he has to go around to these different members of the band who are like, no, I'm not fucking working with Bobby no more. That guy's a fucking nightmare. I'm not working with him. And then he finally like convinces them. He gets Bobby to go to rehab and get cleaned up and XYZ, and he gets cleaned up, and it's fucking sad, dude. This guy is one of the like, you know, pioneers of rock and roll and music. He's like one of the best musicians ever in the West, right? In modern era. And he's like stuck in his parents' basement smoking himself to death. Just like missing teeth, just dying, just fucking killing himself because he's so fucked up in the head. But anyway, the guy gets it all back together. Bobby gets straightened out. The whole band's getting ready to play. And the night of the show, Bobby relapses and he fucks it all up. It's so sad. It's so fucking sad. I know it's easy for us to say like, oh, well, he's a piece of shit and all. Dude, there's guys.
I've known lots of dudes like that. I've known a lot of them, and some of them have been very, very close to me. It is a tragedy, and you have no idea how many of those people, how many unsung, unknown geniuses will just never, ever be known by more than like 50 or 100 people because they couldn't get their shit together. It's very sad. And yeah, I mean, you kind of want to blame them, but at the same time, it's kind of like blaming someone for, you know, being born not able to walk or something like that. It's like, you know, it sounds like an excuse and everything like that. But the fact is that like people have a fairly limited ability to sort of change who they are in terms of their constitutional makeup. And yeah, it's fucking sad, dude. It is really sad. But yeah, the guy was quite a genius, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, straight. Just to give you a quick, I have a very dear friend, old friend that I've been buddies with since high school, and he's like one of my best friends ever. He's like one of the best friends you'll ever have. He's the kind of guy that will here's an example. One time, my car broke down. Like when we were like younger in our 20s, in the middle of the road, country road, and he had no money, he had no gas, right? So he drove halfway and ran out of gas halfway, and went to the gas, walked like all the way to meet me. We got some money together. He walked all the way to the gas station, filled up a jug of iced tea that he emptied out, filled up his car, and then came and picked me up. Like this guy. Damn. One time this guy, like when I was real young, we were doing drugs, man. I was popping pills and drinking and everything, and I overdosed effectively. And I'm laying just like fucking this is what happens when a lot of times when people overdose is they barf and they choke on their own barf and they die. They drown in their own barf. That was happening to me. And my friend, he thought he didn't see me around for a little bit. He thought I was missing. He came up. He said I was all blue in the face. He dug the puke out of my throat with his fingers and sat there all night watching me and made sure I was laid on my side. He stayed up all night long to make sure I didn't die. This guy. He's like one of the best guys you will ever fucking meet. He is he's a brilliant musician. He's probably the greatest drummer I've ever seen in my entire life. He plays multiple instruments, many genres. He's a genius. This guy he fucking trashes his life over and over again. He addicted to crack, addicted to coke, addicted to heroin, addicted to alcohol, addicted to everything. Anything he gets his hands on, meth, he just gets addicted to it and trashes his life. He got over that. He got addicted to working out and he got super jacked, started doing steroids, got addicted to that. And then he got addicted to gambling. One time he came to my house in the middle of the night after he went to the casino. He got like linked up with some weird Indian guy that like blew all his life savings at the casino, and his wife divorced him over the phone. And he's like, this Indian guy's like crying on my porch, like fucking like talking about how he's gonna kill himself. And my friend brought this fucking weird guy. This is how crazy this guy was. He's a fucking nut, but he's like one of the best guys ever. And his cousin died. His cousin died like in front of him. Like had his cousin overdosed and died in his arms while the fucking ambulance was coming. It's like his best friend. It was like his twin brother growing up. So this guy's like all fucked up. But if anybody ever talks shit to this guy to my face, I will punch your teeth out of your fucking head. I don't care how fucked up this guy is. He's a brilliant genius and a wonderful human being. And that's just the way that it is. So anyway, back to Doom. I'm sorry. That's like a complete tangent. But Doom metal is like rife with these kinds of like people, right? It's just, well, metal period, music period is rife with these kinds of people. And it's not their fucking fault. You know, and it is their fault, but it's also not their fault. It's like Beethoven said that his hearing was taken by a jealous demon. There's a jealous demon that fucks these people up, that hates beauty.
Yeah. If you think that that's common in the metal scene, you better check out the punk scene.
Oh my God.
But anyway, it's because it's extreme, right? It's because the people who are involved in this music are involved in they like pushing boundaries, right? There's something about that we really like, and there's something about that about white people that is just prone to that, and there's something especially about that about Northwestern European people that like this. And I'm talking about the whole package. I'm talking about the drugs, I'm talking about the extremity, I'm talking about the boundary pushing, I'm talking about the metal and everything. We Northwestern Europeans have a dark folk soul. There's something about that, something about us that's just like that. And like people who are like the English diaspora, people who are from England, like English people, I shouldn't say English, British people in general, to cover the whole gamut. British people sort of think of themselves as very staid and conventional and tame and all of this stuff. They kind of think that they don't have any culture and that like all of this. But man, there is no churning volcano of potentiality more than there is in the British people. I will defend this to the day I die. That's why you see some of the most extreme nationalism is in Northwestern Europe. It's why you see so much of that in that part of the world. We as peoples, roughly speaking, let's just say Germanics and Celts, we have a very dark folk soul, and we share this with the Russians. They probably get it from the shared ancestor in the Germanics, which are the Varangians, which were basically Norse peoples who traveled to the Kievan Rus in the Middle Ages. That's probably where they get it. And if you want to think more about this, if you want to get a clearer picture of the darkness in the soul of white people, these people who get made, we get made fun of by other peoples for being, boring and conventional and all of this. Read the fucking sagas. Read the Norse sagas. This bleak all the way through. And I say that like with a tone of approval. I think that like something about that is very life affirming. It's just how it is. You think of the Norwegian peasant when you read like Knut Hamsun or something like that, and it's a very the picture you get of like the peasant on the hillside is of a man who sees life in a very, very down to earth way and a very I'm struggling for the word here. Bleak is kind of the wrong word, but I think you know what I mean.
Despondent.
Yeah, it's like he's just sort of, he's very level-headed and just knows what needs to be done. It's kind of no nonsense about it, and is in some ways, like usually these people are very quiet. They're not really a lot to them. They kind of keep their head down and don't say anything. But when you push these people too far, you will see a fucking dragon emerge. You just watch. Just watch. This is part of the reason why I don't really worry too much about all that's going on with the migrant crisis and shit that's been going on for like, almost 10 years now. I don't worry about that much because we have it in us to turn that around in a split second. But anyway, this is all just to say that we are very Odinic peoples is kind of what I'm getting to. And this is why we like this stuff. It's why we like the doom, which is very extreme in a lot of ways, which we'll unpack. But also doom, as I alluded to before, has it has a very Tyrrhic quality to it as well. It's perhaps the only more Mortyric genre in the same kind of way is punk, actually. Doom metal, just like, hardcore punk rock, is extremely bound by convention. And it's this tension between the structural tierism in doom metal, the conventionality. It's very consistent in its aesthetics. It makes conscious and overt homage to the past. It's the tension between that, what I might call structural tierism, and the Odinic side of it as well, which it doesn't come out of the structure, but is more in the content. The content of this stuff, like the lyrical content specifically, is very dark. It's very esoteric. It's very mystical. It's very searching. A lot of it is very despondent and depressed and everything like that. It's this combination of the structural tierism and the Odinic content that gives us this winning formula that just is doom metal. And I just want to kind of pause over the weird kind of weirdness of it for a second to sort of explain where I come in and like what I get out of it, what I like out of it, which is to say, like the 80s and 90s. So the 70s is kind of like the formative period of doom metal. You get bands like Black Sabbath, that's the big bang of it all. Shortly after that, you get Pentagram, who was actually not really, like, Pentagram was completely unknown, basically, for the first few decades, like the first at least 15 or 20 years of their career. And
they were like Velvet Underground.
Yeah, they were like discovered much, much later. They were extremely influential on some bands that themselves later became very influential, but they weren't really well known. You get bands like Trouble and Saint Vitus, The Obsessed, and we're getting into the 80s and things like that. And of course, as Dave mentioned, later in the 80s, Candlemass, which is very interesting to me. I'd never heard them before, and I gave their main record a listen. That was pretty cool because it was something. It was almost hard for me to compute because you've got the Sabbathy, like really like slow and heavy riffage, but it's got this like late 80s production. It's just so different for me, you know what I mean? But it was cool. I liked it. So that's kind of like, that's the classic sort of like the continuum of like from beginning to, let's just say, the end of the first period or whatever. And the 80s and 90s is when Doom starts to branch out, starts to get weird, and it starts to sort of like splinter into all these subgenres. And this is kind of where I get on board. This is what I really like. This is kind of where we get the birth of drone, which is like, I love that shit. So there's a kind of parallel genealogy that, like, as Dave mentioned before, is kind of dovetailing a bit with grunge. We talked about Soundgarden, Queens of the Stone Age, and Desert Rock, and all of that shit. So in the mid 80s, like punk rock was very, as I said, very conventional. But there was an important band that pretty much everybody has heard of, and many people know, Black Flag. They were a hardcore band, so fast and heavy and just aggressive and very, very straightforward and everything like that. And then they put out this album maybe 7 or 8 years into their career after they become legends, called My War, which was it was like a fuck you to like all of their fans, basically. It was them. They took their hardcore, 180, 200 beats per minute, like punk, and they slowed it way, way, way down. And they just like, the first half of the album is like still punk shit, but like the second, like the B side of the album is like really fucking slow, churning, chunky riffs with Henry Rollins just like yelling over them and shit. It was a really challenging listening for punks, and most of them hated it. It was like a lot of the fans got off the Black Flag bandwagon at that point, but a lot of people were like, holy shit, what is this? And it kind of actually started something, a new thing moving in that scene. And this was picked up by a band called the Melvins, whom I've talked about before. big band for me and a huge band for the grunge. They're basically the godfathers of grunge. And what Melvins did was they heard that because they were a punk band, and then they heard this Black Flag album, and they were like, okay, wait a minute, hold on. Aggression is not about speed. Aggression is about attitude, and in some sense, it's the opposite of speed. In fact, you could get more aggression out of a slow and heavy riff than you can out of fast blast beat kind of shit, right? Exactly the same realization that Dave had with like moving from death metal to doom. And so the Melvins start out as this fast hardcore punk band, slow everything down to a crawl, and take a Black Sabbath riff and then slow it down to 1/4 and 1/8 speed, disgustingly fucking slow. And they put out several albums in the mid to late 80s. Check out Gluey Porch Treatments, 1987. The first track on that is just sludgy, glacially paced fucking Sabbath riffs. Bullhead, several years later in 91, some really slow and heavy shit on that. And then probably the apotheosis of this slow and heavy wins the race kind of attitude was 1992's Lysol, where this was kind of really the birth of stoner metal, where the first track is just 7 minutes of just fuzzed out guitar, and then the drums kick in at just a snail's pace, and it's just Lysol is one of the heaviest albums ever. It's really a benchmark. And from there, that album really, just like My War, that Black Flag album did for grunge, this Lysol album by the Melvins sort of was the big bang of a lot of stoner metal and doom and drone. From there, you get this record called Earth 2, which takes basically that Lysol album and gets rid of the drums. It's just slow and heavy guitar, and that's it for, I don't know how long, it's 15 minutes or something like that. It's subsonically low and crazy. That's about 1993. Caius, coming out with their albums right around the same time. Certainly not a drone band, but they're in that desert rock scene. Definitely part of the doom sort of heritage. Another band that comes out around this time is actually this Japanese band called Boris. Their first record, called Absolute Ego, is again super slow and heavy. And Boris is crazy, man. I saw them live in the 2000s when they came out with an album called Pink, which is probably their best album, and it's ridiculous. They're like a power trio where the guitarist is this Japanese girl who must weigh 85 pounds. And she wields an SG. She wields a Les Paul like nobody's fucking business. It is ridiculous how good this girl is as a guitar player. I don't know how she holds the thing. If anybody who's ever played a Gibson Les Paul knows that it weighs 200 pounds. It is not a comfortable guitar to play. But Boris is amazing. Super slow and heavy, from across the pond. This would be mid-90s. Then you get Queens of the Stone Age after Caius wraps up. The first Queens album is actually my favorite one. A lot of people like Songs for the Deaf. I like that one too, but I think the first one is actually probably the coolest Queens album because it's got so much it's just got. I always love bands' first albums before they kind of find their sound. You know what I mean? It's just there's so much creativity and everything's kind of going in crazy directions. That one's got a few tracks on it, really, really stonery, doomy. There's one called Mexicola that's really cool. And then there's a whole saga behind the record Dope Smoker by Sleep, which, well, I won't go into that now. It's its own fucking saga, but basically this band Sleep, super slow and heavy, doom metal band, Sabbath worship. They put out an album, I think it's called Sleep's Holy Mountain. And then they decided we want to do a whole album that's just one song. It's 50 minutes long, which, now that sounds not a big deal. there's been many bands who have done that now, but back in like 1998 or 95, I think was when they first started putting that together. It's like that was nobody had heard of that, right? And there's a whole like series of unfortunate incidents where the record wasn't able to be released, and they recorded it, but it got shelved. They couldn't play it live, and it was just like crazy. It actually ended up like breaking up the band basically. But then the record came out posthumously after the band broke up, and it became this sort of like underground legend, this like 50-minute long song, and it's crazy. It's so repetitive, and the singer like basically sings like one note throughout the whole thing. I re-listened to that. I haven't heard that album in like probably a good 15 years. When I listened to it, I was like, holy shit, dude. I mean, the riffs are like cyclical and repetitive, and the singing is so monotone. I was like, you could recite anything to this. You could recite Homeric poetry to this, and it would work. Anything would work to this. It's a very, very like that album still, I think, has like it's got mileage. Basically, that could be a whole thing. But anyway, Sleep, Dope Smoker, obviously a huge milestone. Electric Wizard comes out around this time with Dope Throne. I talked about all that already. And then you get Sun O, which is again sort of harkening back to that Earth 2 record I talked about, where they get rid of the drums. That's exactly what Sun O does. I saw them live, and it was one of the most like formative live music experiences of my life. I'll maybe come back to that, but just to wrap it up here, sort of this genealogy from like Black Flag and the Melvins all the way up to like shit like Sun O, drone metal, High on Fire, which is like the post-Sleep band from the guitar player, and Ohm, which is the bass player's band, the bass player from Sleep. You kind of get this like shit just keeps getting crazier and crazier and further out. And this is what I love about it. This is what I love about doom metal, is that it can push this extremity to like, you know, seemingly infinite heights, but it's all kind of like tied back to this, like it all sort of like ties back to Sabbath and like early metal and everything like that. What got that link, you know, to the past. This is perfect. This is perfectly Tyrrhic, and this is what an art scene should look like. And it's just, yeah. So it's amazing to like, if you start from that point and then work your way forward, you will see this like crazy evolution that's almost like nothing else. Like I can't think of anything in any other music genre that's really quite so extreme, and it's like where it started and where it got to.
Yeah. So that's drone. So you got trad, you got the old school original doom stuff, which is a lot of it is pretty indiscernible from like a 70s hard rock. It's like darker 70s hard rock. You got your drone, as Mike was talking about. And then you also have, you know, your stoner rock. He mentioned Sleep. And then from Sleep, especially their like first album and their first two albums, Sleep and like Holy Mountain, where you get like the fuzz guitar tone, you get like kind of like warbly. I don't know what the effect is called on the bass. You get like this. It's like totally influenced by psychedelic rock, like the 60s psychedelic stuff. Completely influenced that, and you have an entire scene of guys that, you know, their band logo has like a mushroom in it, and it's all in Lava Land. It's almost like black metal where you can't even read the logo. You know, that you get like tons of these. You know, you get something. Is it Stone Mammoth? You get you know, you get your Sleep. You get Trip Hazard. There's tons of these bands. Tons. You can go look them up. So you have stoner rock, which is like really, really cool, right? I love stoner rock. I'm actually on the other side. Speaking of two doom fans aren't the same, I'm actually on the other side of the spectrum as Mike. I don't get into the drone stuff. I appreciate it. I respect it. I think it's cool. I like the sound of it. But my shit, I like the epic doom, and I like the stoner stuff. I like the stuff that is bluesier. But I also love the epic doom. So epic doom comes in from Candlemass in the 80s. With Candlemass, it took doom metal, what was already there, and it added really melodramatic operatic vocals. It added themes about magic and depression and dark sorcery and witchcraft, and it's very gothic. And if you ever listen to Candlemass, please let me die in solitude. It's got that kind of shit. So from Candlemass, you get like Solitude Eternus. You get Solstice, which actually I think our buddy Dan Cap is playing in now. I think he plays with Solstice now, which is pretty cool.
Damn.
You get bands like Sorcerer. You get who else is in that? I can't think off the top of my head. Some of the bands, I can't even remember what they're called because their names are in Latin. That's how like gothic-y and shit it is. But you have a whole Chemist comes out of this, and then you start getting what's called funeral doom, which is the most furthest extreme of epic doom. It takes epic doom, but it makes it even more miserable and slower. It's like a blend between epic doom and drone. I don't get
this
into
is like this was a discovery for me. I was not aware of funeral doom before we started thinking about doing this episode, and I did a deep dive onto it. I love that shit, bro. I'm a funeral doom fan now. Holy shit!
So you get into like Ahab and Bell Witch and shit like that.
Yeah. There's this one band called they're like one of the OG first funeral doom bands. They're called Thurgathon or something like that, and it's like they put out this record from '94 called Stream from the Heavens that's just so slow and like everything's so down tuned, and the vocalist is gurgly as hell. It's just like fucking crazy.
Oh yeah,
I would recommend that to anybody. It's so good, man.
Yeah, Thurgathon is from Finland, right?
Yeah, that's them. Yeah, no, it's fucking dope as shit. This is the thing, man. This genre, it's just the genre that keeps on giving, bro. There's just so many little nooks and crannies to poke into. It's just amazing.
Yeah, Thurgathon is like they have a lot of like Lovecraft stuff. I think one of their albums called Yog-Sothoth, right? They have like a lot of shit like that. And then you got bands like Skepticism, Shape of Despair, Mournful Congregation, like these bands, Esoteric. There's a just ton of and these bands, a lot of them have death metal vocals, and a lot of this shit's about like fucking suicide and self-harm and like sacrificing yourself to demons and candlelit dark rooms, and it's like the darkest, most miserable shit. Like it's fucking, it's pretty cool. Some of it's very, very. These guys are tuning down to like A and F and like this unfathomably low tunings and just brutal. It's a very acquired taste. You guys listening that if you are listening to like Paranoid and Master of Reality albums, and then you jump to this, it's a completely different world. But you can still hear the influence. So dude, I just so this is what I love about all of doom metal, right? All of doom metal, first of all, it's old school. You guys know me. I am king of the grognards. I love old school shit. I love retro vibes. I love it's about tone and vibe, which is perfect. Speaking of like white boy shit, white dudes are just notorious for liking for like tinkering with shit, like DIY tinkering, doing your own stuff, dude. Doom metal, what rules the doom metal scene is guitar players that love boutique pedals. You're going to find hundreds of YouTube channels with just like a few hundred subs of guys that just make their own pedals, scouring the internet for vintage tube amps, finding buying old school retro guitars and modding them out, finding you go on like Reverb and look up guys buying like Gibson 57 Burstbucker pickups from 1960 and shit. Like they pay like $1,000 for it. I don't know about that much, but like it's they spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get the perfect tone. It's like tone chasing. It's about vibe and like it's so bizarre. It's totally white dude shit.
How much is how much is that like the folkish scene too, eh? Like these like dudes like doing like vintage DIY pedals, like 3 of them produced in existence, and like and all of this shit. It's just like so much like like support folk economy. It's just like they're doing exactly the same shit that we're doing. It's just in a different vein.
Exactly. It's just like in us. It's who we are, and like it's like and this is probably why I was attracted to doom metal and the doom scene and shit like that, because I grew up a metalhead. To me, heavy metal is supposed to be heavy and it's supposed to be metal. And when it starts getting clean and pretty and a little too intricate and everything, don't get me wrong. I am a thorough respecter of the maestro Yngwie Malmsteen. I fucking love Malmsteen. I love virtuosic neoclassical guitar playing. I shed a tear that Jason Becker is bound to his wheelchair with Lou Gehrig's disease. The guy wrote some of the most magnificent, beautiful music human ears have ever heard. I adore that shit. I adore power metal. I love that shit. But to me, in my core, in my heart of hearts, as a metalhead, metal is supposed to be raw. It's supposed to fuck. It's supposed to be gritty and it's supposed to be metal. And when I fell in love with heavy metal and I heard the first Slayer albums and I heard the first fucking, Morbid Angel albums, the first Morbid Angel albums, Obituary albums, those early death metal albums, they had that vibe. Fucking raw, gritty, growly guitar tones. The early, the trad heavy metal albums, shit like Accept and Saxon. Even you get like these guys. They had the growly tube amps, and it was just pounding, and it was like gan and gan gan. It just like it fucked it. Like you could bang your head to it. It was like primal shit. And when you go to the concert, you want to mosh and you want to shove and you want to while out and be an animal. And there's some fat guy that's all sweaty and he's got his shirt off. And he's getting everything stinky and he stinks, but you don't give a fuck because you're drunk and you're feeling fucking like an animal. I love that. I love fucking, scratching the fucking surface of man and finding the ape underneath red-handed and roaring. That's what heavy metal is to me. And I think that doom metal captures that in a way that a lot of metal has forgotten. And it like breaks my heart when I hear like Periphery and they have like R&B and dubstep elements and their tone is it's all pretty and gay and I hope they die. I fucking hate it. Sorry, I got to work. I love it.
I get it. I 100% get it, dude. And this is kind of why I am a metalhead, but like metal is not like the one thing that like, if I had to pick one genre, I don't know if it would be metal. It would be something metal influenced. I guess it would be grunge because that's what I like. But it's like what I like is I like shit where the wheels are about to fly off the train. The train is hurtling down the track at like 800 miles per hour and the wheels are just about to come off, but they're still kind of just barely hanging on. That's what I like, man. I like it when the shit is like exciting and fucking just barely within control. Like, the horse is just about to bolt and like the whole contraption is barely hanging together, but it's still there. That is riding that sort of fine line that's what I'm looking for, bro. That's what I like about the Melvins, for example, because they're so fucked up and like the riffs don't really repeat. They just play like the guitar player might play the same riff twice in the same song, and it's just like non-cyclical, and everything's like always shifting and changing, and you're like, what the fuck? And it's just keeping you off kilter, and it's weird, and you just don't know what to expect, and it's exciting, and there's twists and turns, and everything's fucked. That's what I like, dude. It's that might sound like the opposite of what we talked about with Sleep, with the same riff for 52 minutes, but it's kind of got that same vibe to it, and this is why, you know, when I think of metal and I think of stuff like Metallica, I love the old school Metallica. I mean, who doesn't? They just were amazing songwriters, and they were able to do so much, and it's just like it's a landmark for like Western music, but it doesn't kind of get me juiced up and like ready to punch somebody like listening to the Melvins. Yeah. Like there's like, when I saw the Melvins in 2003, they were touring with I can't believe I forgot the Mike Patton band. How could I forget a fucking Mike Patton band's name? But anyway, they were touring with one of his bands, and this was my introduction to the Melvins. My buddy that I worked with, I was like working at a call center. My buddy's like, you got to come, like, let's go check out this.
You said Mike, you mean fucking Faith No More?
No, it wasn't Faith No More. I can't believe I forgot the fucking name. It's not Phantomas. It's on the tip of my tongue. Tomahawk.
Tomahawk. I was going to say Mr. Bungle. I never heard of Tomahawk.
Nah. Oh, God. I would give my left nut to have seen a fucking Mr. Bungle concert. But anyway, back in the day, Tomahawk, 2003, I saw them with the Melvins. The Melvins opened for them. And to be honest, I mean, I was there to see Tomahawk, but the Melvins blew him out of the water. And that is fucking saying something. So my buddy at a call center, we worked at the same call center. He's like, let's go. We got to go across the border. And back then it was easy. Back then you could just go down to fucking Detroit and, you know, just drive across the fucking border like it was nobody's business back, you know, when we were all much more innocent. So we went there and we crossed like through these, like, you know, still Detroit, even though it was the early 2000s, it was still shitty and dangerous. And we crossed fucking gangland territory to go check out this concert. And we get there, and then this band starts playing, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, is this even a song? Like, what the fuck's going on here? And then it just busts into the heavy riff, and it's like guys just like, all of a sudden it's like this volcano erupts, and the mosh pit just starts churning and churning, and guys are like, they're just fucking, it's like you said, it's like apes just fucking running in a circle and like punching each other and like hitting each other and just like body checking, and just like guys are getting thrown to the floor, dudes are picking them back up, guys are getting thrown around, and I'm just like, okay, and I just fucking dive into it. And it's like getting fucking thrown into a whirlpool or like a tornado. You just get thrown around. Your will is nothing. You are just a rag doll being tossed around by these primal elements. And I was just like, just fucking churning in this mosh pit. It was like, not the first mosh pit I'd ever been in, but the first real fucking, like, you're going to get fucking hurt one. And so it's like, it's going and going and going. And I'm just like, I'm just getting fucking jacked and getting like fucking, just like every ounce of testosterone is just peaking at this point. And it's like me and this other guy on the other side of the mosh pit just like look at each other and just fucking run at each other. I don't know what the fuck we thought we were going to do, but we ended up accidentally going like head to head, like two fucking rams. And the next thing I know, I'm just like, I just wake up and somebody's like pulling me off to the side, and they're like, dude, stand the fuck up. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, oh, Melvins. that's where oh yeah, that's where I am. I could have been in fucking space or whatever. And it's just like, that is what fucking doom metal is about. It's about slow and heavy and testosterone and just getting thrown into a just whirlpool of elements that you can't extract yourself out from. And from then on, I was a committed Melvin fan. It's like, I already like grunge by this point, but I had discovered sort of like the Heimat of grunge. I had discovered the fucking, the bottom layer of it, the bedrock of where it came from. And I was like, oh, this is the shit. Yeah, fuck yeah. So that's doom metal for me. That's what it's all about. It is at once the most zoned out and trippy and trance-like and like relaxing thing, but at the same time, it fills up all that sonic real estate. It fills up that like for all the way from like fucking 20 hertz, like subsonic frequencies to the tip top of the sonic range with all the fuzzed out sort of effects and everything. It just fills up all of that space with just fucking primal energy. And yeah, that's what I got out of that experience, apart from, clearly a bit of brain damage, but it was worth it, man. Totally worth it.
Yeah. Dude, you guys listening, like if you're listening to this and you've never really been a metalhead and metal might be kind of new to you, you've never been to a concert, dude, go to an underground metal concert. You got to at least go once in your life. It doesn't even matter if you know what the bands are, right? Like hit me up, be like, yo, are these good bands? And I'll give you the okay or not. Dude, it's so much fun. It's just like white boy shit. Dude, it's like going and fucking wilding out. Speaking of a quick story, I've always loved, I probably wouldn't get into mosh pits now because I have like back injuries. I would do it a little bit just because I can't fucking help myself. But when I was younger, I was fucking, dude, that was the first thing. I wanted to be right where the mosh was going to be. And it's so fun. One time, one of my favorite memories, I was actually at Sounds of the Underground and in Philly, and Hatebreed played. I'm actually not a real big Hatebreed fan, but that live, they fucking rule. They are fucking energy, dude. That guy, Jamie Josta, there's a reason that guy's famous. And it's not because he's a great vocalist, and it's not because he's astro. It's because that guy's a monster on stage. Well, it was Hatebreed, and Hatebreed did a wall of death. I don't know if you guys don't know what a wall of death is. It's when they like separate the band, or they separate the crowd into two sides, like on either side of the venue, and they pump you up. They dun 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 dun. Oh, they get everybody all riled up, and then they go, and everybody runs full sprint and smashes into each other. It's fucking awesome. And I remember like we're split up, and I see all the way across is this guy, and I complete stranger, and I like lock eyes with this guy. We like lock eyes, and we're like looking at each other like two fucking bulls, like two rams about to fucking do it. And usually right when the wall of death collides, most people are smart and they like jump up and turn around, or they like move their heads out of the way, right? Which is still like you still collide into each other, smash into each other, everybody falls. But me and this dude just like ran full sprint playing chicken, and neither of us like bitched, and we smashed foreheads like fucking like and we both like knocked each other like fucking like both fucking fell out, right? And next thing I remember is like in a mock, dude, you go to a metal show, it's people assume it's just fucking violent, whatever. It's brotherhood. Somebody falls, everybody stops, you pick the guy up. Right? You never let somebody get trampled, because people die that way. I've been to concerts where ambulance had to come because motherfuckers were noobs and posers and didn't know the metal code of picking guys up, and motherfuckers got trampled. That's horseshit. Yeah. You pick the guy up. Always, always, always stop everybody. Pick the guy up. Well, anyway, me and this dude just fucking crash. And it was like, if anybody's ever been like punched out, it's just like, you hear the fucking ringing, and like everything goes like you just get fucking completely knocked out. Me and this dude both got knocked out. We both got picked up. And I remember just like hazy as fuck, barely seeing. And I like look at this guy, and we just like bro hug. We're like, that was fucking sick with this guy. But I'm going to go back, and I'm going to completely be a hypocrite, because I think that dualities within everybody's got dualities, and you don't need to fucking explain them. And that's just the way that it is, because it's pretty rational. Doom metal and stoner rock and all this stuff also contains beauty. it's also beautiful. You have this, you have these songs. It's not all raw and heavy and brutal. A lot of times the shit is just groovy and funky and sounds good. It's catchy. And like Mike said, it fills the room with its tone and it vibrates you with all its bass. And it's just, and the lyrical themes are spiritual. And here's another thing that's really cool about doom metal is that, pagans and Christians argue about whether it's pagan or Christian. Right? Because there's so much doom that has like religious, like gothic Christian elements. For fuck's sake, one of their founding members of Sleep, what's his name? Justin Marlar. Justin Marlar.
Oh, the drummer.
Went on to be, no. The one of the original guitar players before Matt Pike. Who Matt Pike is a heathen. At least it's believed that he's a heathen. He hasn't come out and said it, but he's believed to be a heathen. He wears a Mjolnir. He makes references to the gods a lot. It's believed that he's a heathen. One of their original members left the band to go become an Orthodox monk, an Orthodox Christian monk. Yeah. So there's like, you got mythopoetic pagan themes, and then you also have Christian, like devotional themes. A lot of songs are about devotion to God.
Think about that Dope Smoker like song. What is it? It was originally called Jerusalem, and it uses a lot of biblical imagery. It's suffused with biblical imagery. It's about a caravan traveling through the desert. You know, there's definitely religious undertones in like all of it for sure.
And also there's a lot of references to like literature too. Tons. They make tons of Frank Herbert's Dune. You know what I mean? You got let me think. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they absolutely do have tons of references to Frank Herbert's Dune. It's in there. I've seen it. They have like I can't remember if it was a song. They have a song called Moadub, right? And so he's talking about smoking doobies, but Moadub is a reference to Paul Atreides from Dune, the Moadib, the prophet. So it's like there's lots of like fantasy and sci-fi shit in there too, but there's tons of spiritualism as well. You listen to things like Scott Weinrich's band. You mentioned The Obsessed. The guy from The Obsessed, St. Vitus, and then The Obsessed started a band called Spirit Caravan. We actually listened to one of the songs on our songwriting episode.
Yeah, I remember that.
Called Lost Sundance. Dude, Lost Sundance, you know, he's like low vapor glow, infinite sadness becomes ultimate wisdom, flow, nature's flow, venerable Father, deliver us from this darkness. And he's talking about the sun is the father, and then he says, glow, sacred dome, night moon sister, embrace earthly mother. He's talking about the sky father and the earth mother from Indo-European pantheons. And then you have bands like Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats with songs like Mount Abraxas. He says, I'll show you God on the highest, up where no one can see, up where no one can find us. You know what I mean? I can't remember the rest of the lyrics, but he's talking about climbing this mountain so they can reach, so they can speak with the divine. Dude, there's so much like esoteric, spiritual, poetic stuff in there. It's a beautiful thing. It's just beautiful, and it's psychedelic, and it's imaginative, and it takes you on these journeys, and it's just fucking awesome. It's awesome. It's meaningful. It's spiritual. It's deep. It's all of the above. Doom metal and all of its genres it's an acquired taste. And if you want to get into doom, I would suggest obviously you got to start with Black Sabbath. Speaking of religiosity, I think it's pretty ironic, and it's pretty fucking stupid. The church ladies of that era that protested and shut down Black Sabbath and like tried to chase them out and take them to court and all this, accusing them of influencing like Satanism on the kids. Dude, Black Sabbath they were a Christian band. Geezer Butler is a devout Catholic. Ozzy was a Christian. Tony Iommi's a Catholic. Like these guys were religious guys. The album Master of Reality. Who is the master of reality to a Christian? The master of reality is God. The album Master of Reality is about their devotion to God. It literally is. The song Lord of This World is warning you about Satan. The song Iron Man warns you about Satan. Like, obviously, they got a lot of songs about smoking weed and dark stuff. Nativity in Black is a warning about believing in the devil and not, they are a fucking Christian band. You know what I mean? So it's just like these dumbass normie cunt church lady whores, these longhouse Janny sluts, these fucking horrible harpies didn't take the minute to listen to what they were saying, listen to what they were talking about in their songs, and just heard the diminished fifth and heard these like the riffs and they acted fucking stupid because they're idiots. When in reality, they could have embraced Black Sabbath and said, guys, kids, listen to this Christian band. You know what I mean? But hey, you know what? The result of Black Sabbath, the influences of Black Sabbath, maybe they, because there's a lot of like pagan themes, and especially when you get into the Dio years, you get a Dio was a kind of a deist, right? He was a religious guy, but he had tons and tons of like mythopoetic themes in his lyrics. He brought mythopoeticism to heavy metal. You know what I mean? Before that, it was about girls and drugs and sex, drugs, and rock and roll and fast cars. And, ain't no gonna take my car. I'm gonna take it to the head. And then Dio is like, we're gonna talk about fantasy and dragons and wizards and magic and ancient worlds and like all of this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So, dude, doom metal is just, it's like, I don't know. I'm yakking, but you guys.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying though, man. It's like those church ladies that you're talking about too. Just look at where they ended up today. Look at where their shit has ended up today. These fucking like Protestant mega churches, like, because that's like, it's all coming out of the evangelical side of things. I don't think you saw a whole lot of Catholics spurging out about that, during the 80s. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most of it was coming from the kind of like evangelical side of things, right? Which is pretty far away from what we're about in this sphere. Their shit is dying, bro. There's like, it's totally sick and it's withered, and where it is expanding, it's becoming this tranified fucking like LGBT church fucking nonsense. That shit has no vitality, no future, no nothing. That's like, and I'm not taking a dig at Christianity as a whole. I'm talking about specifically like that side of things is absolutely like culturally just, it has no place anymore, right? This could have been a direction it could have gone, right? But instead they ceded it to people like us, people like in the folkish scene, underground, alternative kind of like religious elements that were sort of like bubbling under the surface and ready to burst forth, which they are now. And doom metal itself is a wonderful vehicle for that, as Dave mentioned, because it is so it's trance-inducing, right? And we talked about how something like the Melvins, which is kind of going in a little bit of a different direction. It doesn't really repeat all that much. It's angular and weird and psychedelic in its own way. But the trance effect of something like Sleep's Dope Smoker, this repetitive 52-minute song that basically like hits the same kind of note, so to speak, for all that, its entire duration, it sort of like gets you into it opens you up to suggestive territory. Imagine in a parallel universe, if something like traditional Christian aesthetics or theology was somehow married to something kind of like Black Sabbath. It sounds ridiculous to say now. It actually makes sense now. It would have sounded ridiculous to say back in the 1980s, but it makes sense because it's deeply spiritual music, and it's clear that it's deeply spiritual music because the people who play it now, it is for them it's a kind of supplement to spirituality, and it's very trance-inducing to like listen to these repetitive, fuzzed out, subsonic tones. And believe me, when you go and you see this stuff and it's played live at an ear-shaking volume, there is a kind of spiritual there's something that happens. There's a kind of transformation. There's a thaumaturgic transference that goes on when you hear a riff that fucking loud, repeated over and over and over again. And it's very much like a mantra in some ways. I spoke a little bit about my discovery of what a mantra is when I was a kid, accidentally discovering that. I forget which episode it was, but one of them way back, I talked about this, about just repeating a word over and over and over again, just because I was a kid and had nothing better to do, and then getting lost in this sort of like netherworld of like inability to speak and like unable to sort of like collect my thoughts and dissociation and everything. I discovered what a mantra was by accident. This is the kind of suggestive space that this kind of music can get you into when you hear the same riff over and over and over again, or, you know, when you contemplate the flickering candle for hours and hours on end, or if, you know, you're a Muslim, if you get lost in a visual mandala or something like that, because, you know, they don't have the same things that we have. When you hear or you experience this kind of brute repetition over and over again, each repetition starts to take, each iteration of the guitar riff starts to take on a life of its own. The fact of hearing the same thing over and over and over again opens something up in your folk soul. It opens you up to a suggestive state. It allows you to be influenced by things that are pre-conscious, that are only able to be felt, that are, you know, non-physical, shall we say. And doom metal has this incantatory quality to it. It puts you into this trance-like state. And it especially has this effect live. I think I've also told the story some time ago about going to a Sun O concert. And, you know, my old buddy from back in the day that I talked about the beginning of this episode, he took me there. He was like, you got to go see this band. He had introduced me to Sun O. Anybody who wants to hear something really pushing the boundaries of what music can be should listen to their White 2 album. It's from 2004. It is a real experience. Anyway, I went to see them on the next album tour, and they went to this like little sort of like pub they played in the city I was in. And I was just like, I don't even remember who opened for them. I think it might have been Thrones. But anyway, the lights go down, everything's black, and the only thing you can see across the front of the stage is the Sun amps, because they name themselves after this brand of amplifier. And the only thing you could see, there's not a light on in the entire place. There's just the tubes that are just burning, and you can see that, and it's lighting up, low light throughout the entire pub. You can kind of like just barely see anything. And then the hum starts. The guy hits that low note on the guitar, and it just shakes everything. It's at such an immense volume, way louder than any normal concert. And I was just like, whoa! It was like a visceral, and I mean that, it was like a physical experience, just getting shaken by this, like, you know, what must have been, you know, 25 hertz, 20 hertz, 17 or 15 hertz below the threshold of human hearing. And they bring out their own custom-made subwoofers and place them at the front of the stage, right, to be able to actually reach those levels. And it just feels like the air is thick. It feels like you're moving in a kind of soup, like something is going on that's like directly connecting you with what's going on the stage in a way that's just like not, it's very different than like listening to a loud like Pantera concert or something like that, which is awesome in its own right. This is something very, very, very different. And I was just like, because everything was so dark and you could just barely see anything, I'm like just trying to make out what's going on. And I could see guys, could barely make them out at the front of the stage, and they're just leaning their heads up against this like speaker system, this like low, subwoofer and like the monitors and everything. I'm like, what the fuck are these guys doing? Because it's like, if you play a normal guitar riff out of one of those and your head's right up to it, you're just gonna be deaf, completely deaf, and that's it. You're done. That's it. You lose your hearing. I'm like, what the fuck are these guys doing? And they're just doing it throughout the entire concert. And after a while, I was just like watching them do that. It's like, I'm like, is this really happening? Am I hallucinating? I smoked a bunch of weed before I went, and I'm like, something's not right, bro. I gotta get the fuck out of here. So I just left. I just walked out the door. I'm like, okay, step outside, take a breath, collect yourself, have a cigarette, smoke some weed.
Oh yeah.
Get back in there. And I'm like, okay, all right. Yeah, that's really what they're doing. Holy fuck. What the fuck? What is that all about? And as I'm like, just before then, as I've gone out the door, I'm like, step outside. And I'm like, I'm just expecting to hear like the craziest, most ripping eardrum shredding tinnitus that I've ever heard in my life. And I step outside, everything's clear as a bell. I can hear a pin drop on the street. Nothing, because it's all so low. It's like this drone doom metal, this super subsonic low tones. It doesn't actually like destroy your hearing, right? Because all that shit, for technical reasons, in the upper ranges of your hearing is where you're going to lose all that if it's too loud. But if at the low end, it doesn't actually hurt. So it was just it was such a crazy experience. It really did feel like stepping back in there, like going into another world. And I could see that being a kind of like ritualistic environment in which someone actually has a transformative experience. Now, probably that's not going to happen at a Sun Oak concert, although maybe, but you could imagine something like that being actually put together with a truly, like a real religious tradition that goes back for thousands of years and uses a real liturgy that connects you back to the deep history of your people, going all the way back to where the language wasn't even the same and you don't understand any of the words anymore. Like, you could imagine that kind of an experience being had, a religious experience with that sonic quality to it as well. That was a train that the evangelical Christianity missed. Like, you can imagine in an alternate universe what could have been and what might still be for yet another tradition kind of thing. This is the power of something like doom metal, what it could do, and it still could do. And it's very early days. It could still go in that direction and be something very like it could be something utterly earth-shattering. This is the power of this kind of music. I'm sort of spitballing here about what could be, but you know what I mean, though. Very few genres have this transformative quality that doom metal does.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I think that there's a huge opportunity to like take some of this music with, especially in the doom stuff, and like create something really spiritual and meaningful. I think so. How can I articulate this? Us as like folkish spiritualists, I really believe that it is time to express ourselves through art, right? I have some music that I'm working on. It's really experimental. It's nothing I've ever made before, but I think that we can use these avenues of music as vessels to carry folk spiritual messages, right? And not just use it as like, this rocks or this is it. So here's something that kind of drives me nuts. So a lot of these like stoner rock bands, if they were around in, I don't know, the late 80s or even the 90s or even like late, I listen to bands that it's like, dude, if these guys came out in 2000, they would have been like millionaires. There's nothing weird. They're just a great rock band with really catchy, awesome songs. And it's weird to me that they're not popular. Well, the masses don't like rock and roll anymore. They're like gay and paused, and they listen to mumble rap and Lizzo and like other absolutely just the abyssally just degenerate horse shit.
Yeah.
So it's like, how long until we get a resurgence of rock and roll? You know what I mean? Because it's not going to be gone forever. The shit that's popular now is not going to be there forever. We're already starting to see, like, especially with the Zoomers. The Zoomers are discovering classic rock. Like, they're buying up shit like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and Eric Clapton and the Eagles. They're like discovering this shit for the first time. It's only a matter of time before the next generation are like, you know, I want to hear some rock and roll. But I think that rock and roll needs to become bassier, because the last few generations of youth were into rap, were into EDM, were into things that were very, very bassy. What's the bassiest kind of rock and roll? The bassiest kind of heavy metal is like doom and stoner. You know, you're not going to hear, you know, that huge room filling bass sound in modern death metal or progressive or anything like that. It's just not this. It doesn't have that sonic quality. So I think we have an opportunity as folkists who already love this art form to kind of take up the mantle and start creating the next generation of influential music. And I'm not saying that we should create music to be influential. I think that if that's your aim, to be influential with your music, you're not going to be influential. We should do it just because it's going to be beautiful and cool and weird and meaningful to us and to people that listen to it and to our friends. And I think that from there, it can spawn some really cool stuff. And I think where a lot of art, like little art scenes in our spheres, have failed is that they have not zoned in on an art form itself. Mm-hmm. They said, well, we are these people and we all create art, instead of we all create this kind of art. You know what I mean? And I think that's, for example, like look at what's going on in the pulp scene right now. It's not like we're all monarchists, or we're all fucking anarcho-fascists or phalangists or like whatever ism, right? It's not, we're all this ism creating art. We are all like guys, this right of center creating pulp. And pulp is the what we're creating. So what has happened is like there's like all of these guys coming from all of these different corners coming together to create this cool literature. So if we're like, hey, we want to make folk doom or folk rock or folk psychedelic or whatever we would call it. I call my shit doomadelic, folk doomadelic. This is what we create. Then I think shit's going to pop off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, man. It's like you think of like some of the art scenes, like the burgeoning art scenes in the dissonant right or whatever. So much of it is about putting out a message, right? But that's never really been what good art is about. Good art has never been about something propositional. It's never been about carrying forward an idea, right? The idea is always epiphenomenal to the medium. It's cliche, comes from Marshall McLuhan, that the medium is the message, right? We need to be focusing on a medium. Nothing is going to put the political message of, let's just say, our thing, nationalism. Let's just be broad about it. No, nothing is going to put the political message of nationalism on the map more than creating or enshrining a culturally important medium or genre, whether it be a music genre, whether it be a genre of literature. If you were to create the next punk or metal or novel or like documentary or like any kind of a genre. Take a genre that is important. Imagine if nationalism was the first on the scene to create that. Nothing is going to make nationalism more important and accepted and the political message resonate more than doing something like that. Dave's absolutely right. It is the medium that needs to be aimed at rather than the message, because the message will follow if the people who believe in the message create the medium. And I'll say this for Doom as a possible candidate for something like that, for a resurgence. I agree that it is a good candidate for a resurgence. In prepping for this episode, which basically involved just basically going back and listening to all the music that I loved, since starting Imperium and having kids, I've had zero time to make music, and I've made basically zero music. Nothing has got me wanting to make music more than prepping for this episode, because of the still untapped potential in this genre, I think. And there's so much to like about it. What I like about it, and this is sort of tying into the potential to break through into mainstream consciousness, what's great about doom metal as opposed to most other really heavy metal is that doom is both aggressive and melodic at the same time. It really is a great vehicle for storytelling because, first of all, you can understand what the fuck's going on. If you're listening to Slayer and he's going, like you don't know what the fuck he's saying, right? It's not a storytelling vehicle. Doom is. It takes its time, it spreads out, and it gets its message across. And it's melodic, so people can latch on to it. Normies ain't going to be into, as much as I like the shit, normies ain't going to be into, like, sludge, like, noise rock. It's just not going to fucking happen. It's going to be something melodic that they can latch on to. And, this is just part of what makes it cool, is that doom metal has a kind of scale and a weight to it that like hardly any other genres have, even most metal genres. It sounds big, if that makes sense, in a way that other metal genres kind of don't, and that other music genres really don't. It's one of the few genres that can really be described as epic, I would say. And that there has never been a time in at least recent history where the sweep of what's going on, that the sweep of the changes that are happening are epical. They are really fucking huge. We are living at a time of a turning point. It is a time of great turning for all the peoples of the world for many, many, many reasons. This is the time to tell epic tales and to place ourselves mythically inside of our own epic that is going in a direction in a sort of Sorelian way to mythicize our trajectory, because that is what is going to carry us forward into the future. And you could see Doom as a potential vehicle for all of that stuff. And the last thing I'll say here about what I like about Doom, just in general, is that it is somehow at the same time simultaneously has crushing riffs. It's immediate. Like we said before, it makes you want to get in the mosh pit. It gets your testosterone jacked up, but it's also atmospheric at the same time. What a bizarre combination that is, right? The only other kind of music I could think of that's really kind of got any cultural purchase at all today is really black metal. And unlike most black metal, I say this, hesitantly. It's both of them at the same time. Most black metal, you've got the like heavy, like, speed, like crushing riffs, and then you've got the sort of like ambient shit, and they kind of like stand side by side. It's kind of hard for black metal to get that shit going at the same time, although some black metal acts kind of do. for doom, they're always going at the same time. It's always heavy, it's always crushing your skull, but it's always atmospheric at the same time. That's something that most other genres can't pull off. So it's got a lot going for it. It could be a very, very good storytelling vehicle. So I think, it's got a lot of potential.
Also, there's a lot of like doom shit you could dance to.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? Like I listen to a lot of shit, and it doesn't make me want to headbang. I groove and I want to dance.
Something like Dope Smoker, it totally could be like a dance. Like, you know, we're not talking about like a top 40 dance hit or anything like that, but it's got a rhythm to it. It's got a definite like pulse beat to it. It's not slow, like, you know, 30 beats per minute, like ridiculous extremity. It's just like it's got a sort of like slow to mid tempo groove going on. Yeah.
Speaking of sleep, there's a couple tunes, like obviously their big one, Dragonaut. Dude, that song, you could dance to that song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not all the riff, but there's some part, like there's some, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just like, it just grooves, man. It's got good groove. Yeah. It's good music. It's catchy music. It sounds American. You know what I mean? It not saying that. I guess it sounds Anglophonic, right? Yeah. I guess you could say, because Anglo music, Anglo rock music always has. It kind of takes blues and makes it, you know, harder. Like especially you listen to stuff like Cream, dude. Cream is like. They got you listen to like Disraeli Gears or Fresh Cream, like some of their albums, those songs are earworms, dude. They get stuck in your head. And that's what Sleep was kind of going for. They were trying to make earworms early on. I think that's the shit, right? So it's like groovy, it's sexy, it's heavy, it's bassy, it's spiritual, it's like all of the above. You know what I mean? I just love it. I think it's great. I just think it's
you know, Doom's got something that like most other metal doesn't have as well. Kind of ties into a little bit what I said before about it being melodic. It's got hooks. You know, metal hasn't really had much in the way of hooks for a long fucking time.
Oh, don't get me started.
But Doom doesn't. Doom has got that, right? Like Doom has got this like Electric Wizard. Okay, so here's a band that's like pretty fucking, you know, for guys that are listening to like Foghat and like, you know, Zeppelin and Sabbath and shit like that, to like go from that to Electric Wizard, that's a big fucking jump. Although they're amazing. Yeah. They're like one of my favorite bands of all time. One of the reasons why they're one of my favorite bands, despite being so extreme, is that they've got hooks, right? Like their tracks are fucking hooky, even though they're down tuned to like drop B or it's disgustingly low and they're super slow. Like that first track off of Dope Throne that's like Forbidden Sorcery, for Venom Sabathi. Like what a fucking hook that is. Holy fuck, dude. So good. But they mix that with like this sonic extremity. There's a lot of potential. It's got a lot of potential to do that shit, right? So yeah, it's so much to like about it. I love the fact that it's against the cult of novelty, even though like the throne doom and like the extreme like funeral doom stuff. Okay, yes, it's sort of striking into unknown territory, but like it's just so derivative. It like consciously so. It like harkens back to Sabbath, and it doesn't apologize for it. It's like yeah, we're doing Sabbath riffs. Yeah, we're doing these same riffs, and we're repeating them for 50 fucking minutes. What the fuck are you going to do about it? Right? It doesn't apologize for it. It's great. It's like you think about like some of the great art of like mankind going back through history, and like not even just European art, something like Egyptian art. If you look at Old Kingdom Egyptian art, we're talking like 3000 BC, right? And then you look at the New Kingdom, somewhere, let's just say in the realm of like 700 or 500 BC. That's a big fucking span of time, dude. That's all the way from Homer to us almost. Yeah. And their artwork, basically from that time forward, a man of the Old Kingdom period would have completely understood the art style of the like New Kingdom Egyptians of the Ptolemaic period. So this is like, that's what art is supposed to be. Art is not about fucking novelty for the sake of novelty. It's about paying homage to the past. It's about being part of a tradition, having a lineage. It's about putting your cairn, your stone on top of this gigantic cairn that your forefathers have built. And that's what Doom is doing it consciously. And I say, fuck yeah. I think that's the way to go.
Hell yeah. I love it. So we're coming up on, how long are we? We're coming up on 2 hours. Is there anything else you'd like to yak about?
Nah, I think that's it, bro. That's a good way to end it.
Hell yeah. All right, guys. So if you have not checked out Doom Metal, go check out Doom. Start with your Black Sabbath. Go into the OGs, the St. Vitus, your Cathedral, your Candlemass, your Pentagram, and then go check out stoner stuff like Sleep and Caius and all the great stuff. Go check out your Epic Doom. Go check out your sludge like Crowbar and Down. We didn't even get into sludge, but yeah, the Melvins. Go check it out, man. And then, dude, there's a gigantic world of just heavy, weird, gothic, depressive shit and funky, psychedelic, groovy shit and weird, just like, dude, it's just, there's an entire universe of music within doom metal that is not blast beats and harsh vocals. There's beautiful singing. There's weird stuff. It's all of the above. There's harsh vocals. There's good guitar work. There's primal, simplistic stuff. There's primitive stuff. It's all of the above. If you like rock and roll and heavy metal, you are going to find something within the genre of doom metal that tickles your pickle. So check it out. Guys, if you're not signed up already, make sure to go over to imperiumpress.org/podcast and go get signed up to the Gumroad so you could get so many great perks like hardback Western Canon series from Imperium Press. Dog, you got to get one. You're going to love it. It'll be on your bookshelf forever and ever. You give it to your kids, it'll be there forever, which is what we hope Imperium Press will be. So if you want to support Imperium Press, achieve foreverness, and also get Culture Dads every single week, go sign up to the Gumroad so you can help them pursue the destiny to blossom into becoming the institution that they were made to be and help save the Western canon from those fucking scumbags that want to erase it. Well, anyway, I'm Big Dave. This is Culture Dads, Age of Sword and Cassette. Hails and blessings to all you dads out there. I'll see you guys next week.